Thieves breaking display cases with hammers.
Welcome back to Advocacy Alchemy with Professor Ross. Today we have a good one, guys. We're diving into the incredible rise and fall of Michelle Mack, a San Diego County mother of three who masterminded an $8 million retail theft ring. That's right, we're dealing with a theft ring today. From stolen makeup to online millions. And now, a mugshot and 5-year prison sentence. Let's break it all down. I will tell you in advance, nobody can today. We're dealing with just some news stories in the law. So with that, let's jump right in.
The alleged ringleader behind a string of retail thefts across 21 counties in California is facing justice. ABC 10 News reporter Moses Small is joining us now live with the charges the woman faces. Hi, Moses.
Hi, Kim. Yeah, Attorney General Rob Bonta says law enforcement gave a San Diego County woman several felony charges for allegedly leading an organized retail crime ring. Now, that group is accused of stealing and reselling almost $8 million worth of beauty supplies from stores around the state. But AG Bonta also says that the issue of organized retail theft in California is a much bigger issue than this case alone. Thieves breaking display cases with hammers, ripping registers out of stores, and committing smash and grab robberies. It's the unsettling reality of retail theft around California. In a press conference Friday, Attorney General Rob Bonta announces charges against a San Diego County woman accused of running a retail crime ring. He says the woman now faces charges for hiring people to steal nearly $8 million in beauty products from stores across the state. That includes in San Diego County.
And then having those individuals go out to the stores, commit the thefts, and either mail them back to her or bring her to her home where she resold them. Again, 136 of them are counts of grand theft. Those are all felonies.
This comes just a day after Assembly Speaker Robert Rivas introduced Assembly Bill 2943, also called the California Retail Theft Reduction Act. It expands the definition of grand theft and it makes it easier to charge people with possessing and selling stolen goods, but it doesn't address Proposition 47. That's the often criticized policy that means you have to steal at least $950 worth of merchandise to get charged with a felony. I'm wondering if you think that Assembly Bill 2943 goes far enough in addressing that crime in a meaningful way.
The thing that deters crime, deters an individual from committing a crime, is the belief that they will be caught if they commit it. Not so much that they will be arrested for a misdemeanor or a felony versus a misdemeanor. The introduction of the bill is not the fully fleshed out bill. So but I have been part of the conversations. I do think it's moving in the right direction. I do think that the real solutions to the problems that we're seeing can be delivered without amending Prop 47.
If you want to see the full text of the California Retail Theft Reduction Act, we'll put a link in this story on our website, 10news.com. Reporting in Kearney Mesa, Moses Small, ABC 10 News.
Probation was denied today for a local mother of three who ran a multi-million-dollar retail crime ring targeting Ulta Beauty. Instead, her new home, for the next several years at least, will be state prison.
And good luck. She's remanded into the custody of the sheriff forthwith for transportation to state prison.
Michelle Mack and her husband both pleaded guilty last summer in exchange for 5-year sentences. But in her husband's case, he only had to serve 1 year of his sentence in custody. The other 4 he could serve out on probation. This afternoon, San Diego County Judge Dwayne Mooring denied probation for Michelle Mack, sentencing her to serve all 5 years in state prison. State police officers arrested the married couple about a year ago for running a national retail theft operation out of their mansion in Bonsall. Michelle admitted she oversaw about a dozen people who stole millions of dollars worth of high-end makeup and handbags from Ulta and Sephora, and then turned around and resold those stolen goods online for a fraction of the price. That hustle made the Macks millionaires. Their online store raked in more than $8 million since 2012. Nearly $2 million of that just in the year 2022. In court today, prosecutors said they're still going after some of her co-conspirators, but that Michelle Mack was the mastermind.
Okay, so from the information from the news stories, we see that Michelle Mack and her husband operated a national retail theft operation, and they did it from their home, which happened to be a California mansion. From the information we see, she recruited dozens of people to help steal high-end beauty products from Ulta and Sephora stores across 21 counties. The stolen goods were then mailed or brought back to her home, where she resold them online at discounted prices. Their operation pulled in $8 million between 2012 and 2022, so that's over a 10-year period. And $2 million of those dollars was made just in a single year. So basically, it looks like she ramped up her operations. She was facing 136 counts of grand theft. And that's important to understand. She ultimately pled guilty, her and her husband. For some reason, her husband received the lighter sentence, 1 year in prison, 4 years on probation. Now, as to her, she received the harsher sentence of 5 years prison time, but it will be served in state prison. So that means that potentially she could get out based on some good time calculation they do in California. With that, let's jump into the law. In Michelle Mack's case, the main charges stem from two important areas of California law. You have grand theft and you have organized retail theft. Let's walk through each of them so we get a clear understanding of what's going on. Number one, grand theft. This is found at the California Penal Code section 487. And this is defined as unlawfully taking someone else's property and it being valued at over $950. It doesn't matter whether the theft happens all at once or through a series of smaller thefts that can be aggregated, which is combined together into one larger crime, as long as prosecutors can show a continuous plan or scheme. Now, the penalty for grand theft is classified as a wobbler offense in California, meaning it can be charged as either a misdemeanor or a felony. As a felony, it carries up to 3 years in county jail, probation in some cases, restitution to the victims, and it may have additional fines. Now, given the seriousness and the scope of Michelle Mack's crimes, which is millions of dollars being stolen, this was prosecuted at a felony level. Keep in mind, Michelle Mack was charged with 136 felony counts of grand theft because each organized theft surpassed $950. And because the crimes were clearly a part of a broader and organized plan to commit theft. Number two, organized retail theft. This is found at the California Penal Code section 490.4. And this is a law that was more recently created to tackle large-scale theft, like what happened here with Michelle Mack. It applies when a person acts in concert with others to steal from retail establishments with the intent to resell the property or to exchange it or to return the items for value. Now, this is automatically a felony under California law and includes penalties of up to 16 months in prison, or should I say it includes a range, 16 months up to 3 years in prison. A person can be put on probation if they have a prior record, and also a person will be ordered to pay restitution. Here, Michelle Mack didn't just sell stolen goods, she was coordinating a network of thieves. She was assigning roles to people, receiving shipments, and she had an online element where she sold all this stuff across the country. This fits an organized retail theft ring exactly as the law intended. Let's move on to our third law here we want to talk about. This is the California Retail Theft Reduction Act. And this is still proposed legislation currently. This is a proposed bill, 2943. And it seeks to expand the definition of grand theft, making it easier to charge people not just for stealing, but also for possessing or selling stolen goods without needing to tie it to a specific theft event. This is aimed at making prosecution smoother for these cases and strengthen the penalties against those involved in the organized ring. So what does it do if this law passes in California? First, it's going to allow seamless felony charges even for possession of stolen retail merchandise. All right, so it seems like it's going to catch a larger category of people. It's going to encourage aggregation across multiple events and counties, and it's going to focus on punishing the resale network. Now understand that this law, or this proposed law, has not come into effect in California, so it didn't apply here. And also, remember, she pled guilty to these charges, so during that negotiated plea, the punishment is not to 136 counts, okay? And if it is, it's all running concurrent. because 136 counts of felony would at least mean 136 years in prison, because a felony essentially means more than 1 year incarceration as a penalty. Let's talk about some of the key takeaways. So when you're talking about theft in California, the amount does matter. In order to be grand theft, it has to be more than $950. Also, the intent matters even more. When you're talking about a theft ring, you have to have some plan in mind of what you're going to do with this stuff, or the plan to even go get the stuff. Next, you also have this aggregation of the thefts that allows prosecutors to show a continuing plan. You also have Miss Mack's leadership role in this whole ring, and that makes her penalty a little bit more harsher than her husband. And finally, you have potentially these newer laws coming in to deal with organized theft beyond just dealing with Michelle Mack. Now, let's dive into our 6 evidentiary standards. But before we work through them, it's important to point out that Michelle Mack didn't go through a full trial. She accepted a plea deal. And what that means is that she admitted to guilt in exchange for a negotiated sentence. However, even when a case doesn't go to trial, officers, investigators, and prosecutors still have to build their case properly, moving through these levels of evidence before they can even make an arrest, much less secure a plea. Let's walk through the 6 key standards and how they apply here. Number 1, mere suspicion. This is simply a vague hunch that something illegal might be happening. In Mack's case, retail loss prevention teams may have first noticed unusual patterns, maybe shelves cleared of high-end makeup without a lot of customer purchases or consistent thefts in certain stores. Number 2, reasonable suspicion. Here you get more specific, articulable facts suggesting that criminal activity is happening or that criminal activity is afoot. At this point, investigators may have identified consistent theft techniques or similar suspect profiles or repeat incidents at certain types of stores. Here, Ulta and Sephora locations across California. They had a reasonable suspicion that organized theft was happening and not just random shoplifting events. Number 3, probable cause. This is when there's enough facts and evidence to believe a specific person committed a crime. For Mack, probable cause likely came when stolen goods were traced directly to her home, or when suspects admitted to mailing goods back to her, and when investigators found online sales matching the stolen merchandise. At this level, officers are able to arrest Michelle Mack and her husband and bring formal charges. Number 4, preponderance of evidence. Now, this is a civil standard, and it means more likely than not that the claim is true. 51% of the evidence is required to win this type of case. If Mack had been sued for restitution separately, her financial records showing millions made from beauty products would easily meet this standard. And those beauty products were stolen merchandise, just so we understand that. All right, let's move on to number 5, clear and convincing evidence. At this level, the evidence must show that the claims are highly probable and they leave very little doubt. This means about 75% of the evidence points to the claim being true. This is used in more serious civil cases, labor disputes, child custody cases, fraud cases, things of that nature where you require more hard evidence to prove your point. Here, we have prosecutors that would need clear and convincing proof of the scale, organization, intent behind the theft ring if they had been negotiating plea deals and preparing for trial. Number 6, beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, this is the highest standard in criminal law, and it's required in order to achieve a conviction at trial. Even though Mack pled guilty and avoided a full jury trial, her case, if it went forward, the prosecution would need to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that she did the following: that she knew of the coordinated thefts, that she benefited financially, and that she directed others to commit crimes across the state. I think they could have gotten all 3 of those. The volume of stolen goods, the organization of the theft ring, and the financial records would likely have made this an easy case to meet the standards. Hence, why the defendant decided to come to the table and reach an agreement versus trying to fight 136 cases that had good facts and potentially could achieve a guilty plea. A guilty verdict. Here's a key takeaway before we go and move on to our next section. Even when someone takes a plea, now behind the scenes, law enforcement still has to build the case carefully. They can't just feel like someone's guilty. They have to get proof, they have to get evidence in order, and then submit it over to the prosecutor. Everyone has to walk through these evidentiary stages to justify every arrest, every charge, and every courtroom negotiation. Now understand that everyone in the process is going through these steps, and they're trying to find ways to either verify or beat, depending on which side you're on. Because think about it, we have law enforcement, they're building the case in order to arrest someone. You have the prosecution that's building the case and the evidence in order to convict that person that was arrested. You have the judge that's looking at all of this evidence to see if it actually meets the standard for a good arrest and whether there's enough here to obtain a conviction. You have the defense teams looking at all this stuff in the negative, in reverse. And then you have the jurors and look at everything and try to determine what's going on. With that, let's move into our jury perspective. Even though this didn't go to a jury, what if it went to a jury? Okay, let's shift gears now and let's put ourselves on a jury. First, one important reminder. When you're called to serve on a jury, you don't leave your common sense at the courthouse door. You're still allowed and expected to use your life experiences, your critical thinking, and your intuition when evaluating what you see and hear. But also remember this, as a juror, you're coming into the case completely blind. You don't know the background, the history, the personalities involved. And it's the responsibility of the prosecutor and the defense attorneys and the judge, not the jurors, to build the case in a way that allows you as a juror to understand the facts, the law, and ultimately what you're being asked to decide. You can only decide based on the evidence and law presented inside the courtroom, nothing else. Now, if Michelle Mack hadn't taken the plea, this case would have gone to trial. Here's what you, as a juror, would have had to have considered. First, was Michelle Mack just another participant in the theft ring? What was her actual role? Or was she the mastermind? Did she recruit, coordinate, and direct the thefts and the handling of the profits? What evidence makes you feel confident one way or the other? Number two, does the volume of the stolen merchandise and the online resale operation suggest an accidental or amateur crime? Or does it all point to being organized, businesslike, and something that took planning, resources, and leadership? Number three, was this a case of someone getting caught up in something bigger than themselves? Or is this all deliberate and the ongoing criminal enterprise built for profits over several years? Remember, they went back a whole 10 years from 2012 to 2022 and looked at all this. Number four, financial motivation. How important is it that the fact that Mack and her husband made millions off this operation? Does the amount of money involved help prove her intent beyond a reasonable doubt? Or do you think that the defense attorneys could convince you that the money was all incidental and not planned? Next, if other members of this ring testified, can you trust their statements? And you have to ask yourself, would they be telling the truth or minimizing their own role in order to cut a deal? It's always interesting when you have several defendants. Usually, somebody works with the state in order to get a reduced sentence and sometimes even immunity. All right, some final things before we move into our conclusion. Remember, if you're sitting in the jury box, you need to see direct evidence or hear direct evidence. Now, what would you need to see in this case? Would you need to see text messages, emails, videos in order to believe that Michelle Mack was the one who orchestrated this organized theft ring? Or is it enough when you see the pattern of stolen goods arriving at her home and then being resold online? And finally, if this kind of case came to trial, how much weight would you give to the testimony of co-conspirators? Or something circumstantial like the financial records? When you see that type of evidence, is it really powerful for you? As a juror, you're not asked to be a detective. You're not asked to speculate. You're asked to weigh the evidence presented, apply common sense, and reach a verdict based on what's been proven inside the courtroom, no more, no less. Now, the hard thing is always to get 12 people to come to one conclusion. Sometimes it's done quickly, sometimes it's done over the process of several days. All right, so with that, let's close things out and let's get you all on your way on this Sunday morning. So, what do we take away from the Michelle Mack case? It's a clear reminder that organized crime doesn't always look like what you see in movies. Sometimes it looks like everyday people running online stores, living in nice neighborhoods, raising families, all while quietly committing serious crimes behind the scenes. Michelle Mack built an empire through hard work. Nope. Innovation? Not really. But through orchestrating theft, exploiting others, and profiting off stolen goods. Eventually, the law caught up with her. Let this be a warning. Getting involved in organized crime might seem easy, profitable, or even harmless, and that's all at first. But once you're in, the consequences become real, and sometimes they become very severe. 5 years in prison, a destroyed reputation, millions owed back in restitution. That's what happened here. Now you tell me, does that seem like easy money anymore? Just stay away from it. Stay on the right side of the law, protect your future by making smart and lawful choices. And if you found this lesson helpful today, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Remember, this is Advocacy Alchemy, and I am Professor Ross. I'll see you tomorrow. Stay safe, stay lawful, and have a good day. And let's go Lakers.